few months ago, he said, we'd like for you to come over and be a part of our Men's Day. And I said, that'd be great. And then he emailed it back and said, well, we usually have 4 lessons. We'd like for you to do all 4 lessons on Saturday. And I said, well, okay, I guess I can do that. And then he said, and it's a long day. If you spend the night, you can come worship with us, and I'd like for you to preach for me. And I said, well, okay. And then he said, and if you're preaching, you could also do the Bible class. And I said, well, okay. And you begin to, of course, you all are familiar with Mike. He's a pretty active kind of guy. I can't keep up with him hardly. So then he said, we do a radio program at 9 o'clock too. So I just spent an hour on the radio. So I wasn't sure what kind of lesson to bring for you, but I thought it would be easy enough to go back and do some things I've done before. We've been studying at Antioch, where I worship regularly, about the names of Jesus. And of course, when you start thinking about the names of Jesus, obviously we've got Jesus, which means Jehovah saves. He also was called Emmanuel, which is God with us. He's the Prince of Peace. He's the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. He is the Alpha and the Omega. He also is identified as the Son of Man. That's a name that he uses quite frequently for himself. And he was called teacher and master and rabbi by those of his disciples who loved him so very much. So we think about the names of Jesus, and they give us some insight into who he was and what our relationship to him ought to be. But you think about those names, and some of those names are kind of personal, some of them are kind of specific, but there's one name that is a name above all names that reflects on the very essence of who he is, and that's the name, the Son of God. And when you turn to the scriptures, you'll find at the very beginning of Mark, in his gospel, Mark 1 and verse 1, that he says, in the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And of course, that does not startling to us, but it surely would have been startling to the people in the first century when they began to hear, first of all, about here's Jesus, he is the Son of God. It tells us about the essence of who he was, the essence of what his work was. And that's what I want us to consider about a little bit this morning. It tells us about his origin, tells us who he is, tells us what we most need to know about him. If we knew that his mother was Mary and his father, at least ostensibly, was Joseph, that doesn't really point us in the direction of what his work was and of what the essence is. This name, the Son of God, is not used all that frequently in scriptures, but it does appear at really decisive moments. At almost all the decisive moments in his life, there that name occurs, the Son of God. So for instance, at his baptism in Matthew chapter 3 and in verse 17, when he is baptized by John in the River Jordan, and he comes up out of the water, then you know that story well. Behold, a voice from heaven said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." He is the Son of God, and you should make sure that you recognize that's the case. At his transfiguration, another decisive moment, he is up on the mountain with 3 of his closest disciples, and he engages in conversation there with Moses and with Elijah. And in Matthew chapter 17, Peter is overwhelmed, as he so often is, overwhelmed with the idea of being in the presence of Moses and being in the presence of Elijah and being with Jesus, who is transfigured before them. And he says, let's build 3 tabernacles, one for each of these great men. And the voice again comes from heaven in Matthew 17 verse 5, and it says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him." Decisive at that moment. You should hear him. And of course, there's kind of some implication here. There's Moses, there's Elijah, great prophets, great messages. Hear him. He is better than, superior to, his message is more authoritative than Moses, than Elijah. He is the Son of God. That's why you ought to hear him. At his cross, when he was being crucified, And when his enemies thought he was defeated there on the cross, and they were mocking him, it was the central point of what they said to him. They said, if he is the Son of God, let him come down off of the cross. And of course, we have our various emotions about reading that story. Mostly for me, it's like anger. It's like, if they'd have said that to me in those circumstances, I'd have come down off that cross. They would have known something at that point in time. But of course, that's what he'd come into the world for, was to die on the cross for you and for me. But you'll note, it's significant, his disciples had scurried away. His masses of those people that applauded him when he came into Jerusalem triumphantly, they were shouting, crucify, crucify. They had forgotten that he was the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But his enemies, they know the central claim, Son of God. That was the central claim about who Jesus was. And that's why they are saying, if he is the Son of God, then let him come down off the cross. They thought that would demonstrate if he was the Son of God. Of course, they didn't think he was, so they didn't think he would come down off the cross. Of course, he demonstrated he was the Son of God by staying on the cross and accomplishing the purpose that God sent him in the world for. Even then, at the foot of the cross, when his body was hanging there lifeless, there's that centurion, that Roman soldier who looks up at him, and of course, maybe he has felt the earthquake and he's seen the sun eclipsed, and he says, truly, this was the Son of God. I don't know what kind of understanding he had about that. It looks to me like he thinks, because of what Jesus has accomplished, because of the miracles taking place, that he was the Son of God. But he is the Son of God because he has done these things, not because he has done these things we know he's the Son of God, but because he's the Son of God, he has done these things. And the centurion has some kind of recognition about that. At his resurrection, of course, he is proclaimed to be the Son of God. He is vindicated when he comes forth from that tomb. The women go and they look at the tomb, and they're looking for the body of Jesus, and the angels say to him, they say, why are you looking for him here? He's not here. He is risen. And his resurrection, coming back from that grips of death and coming back from the tomb, is a demonstration that he is the Son of God. That's what Paul says in Romans chapter 1 and verse 4, when he's trying to rehearse the history of the gospel with those Romans to try and make some points to them, those Roman Christians. He says in Romans 1 and verse 4, declared to be the Son of God in power by his resurrection from the dead. Declared to be the Son of God. The resurrection was God's public declaration. These claims that have been made about him being the Son of God are true. They have been demonstrated as being true. So the Son of God, as a name for Jesus, stands at the center of his life. It is the center, really, of everything that we can affirm about Jesus as Christians. So let's think about some of those things that we learn about Jesus by recognizing that this is the appropriate name for him, the Son of God. The Son of God is a term that they were familiar with in the Jewish rabbinical tradition. They had heard it throughout the Old Testament. It was promised, and they were anticipating, and maybe even at the point when Jesus comes into the world, there's this messianic fervor. They are anticipating, now surely is the time. It's the time for this Messiah to come into the world, this Son of God. Been promised long ago. 2 Samuel 7 and verse 14, the prophet says, God speaks to David, and he says to him, I will be to him a father, and he will be to me a son. That's the prophecy about, in some ways, David, in some ways, Solomon, in some ways, the progeny of David, who's going to be sitting on the throne. But all of it is kind of shadowy, looking forward to a special coming, a special coming of the Son of God. Because this promise points beyond that of just Solomon, who's going to sit on the throne. In Psalm 2 and verse 7, David writes in that psalm there, "You are my son, today I have begotten you." And of course, in Hebrews, I think y'all are studying usually in the book of Hebrews. In the book of Hebrews, that's where at the very beginning is he quotes that passage 2 or 3 times, that he has begotten him as a son. That's just different than the preaching through the prophets, the preaching that came at various times and in various ways. Now in these last days, he's spoken to us through his son, because he is the fulfillment of this prophecy in Psalm 2 and verse 7. "You are my son. Today I have begotten you." I don't know how they thought about that verse, but they anticipated something immense and momentous is going to happen. So Jesus is both David's descendant and he is David's Lord. Peter mulls that over in his sermon on Pentecost in Acts chapter 2 and verses 34 and 36 of Acts chapter 2. You don't know, we know Acts 2 and verse 38 and get to that, but the whole sermon is well worth reading over and thinking about, because Peter deals with a lot of significant topics there in that sermon, that first gospel sermon. But in Acts 2 and verse 34, he quotes this passage from the Old Testament. "The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool. Let all the house of Israel therefore know for certain that God has made him both Lord and Christ, this Jesus whom you've crucified." He is the fulfillment of those prophecies. The prophecy of there's going to be a descendant of David who is going to sit on the throne permanently, because he is the begotten Son of God. And that was the truth that was expressed at his birth when Gabriel says to Mary, "The child that will be born to you will be holy, be the Son of God." And of course, poor Mary, she's like, I don't understand how that's going to happen. How could that be? And he goes on to say to her, the Holy Spirit's going to overshadow you, and you're going to conceive as a result of that. And this child is going to be holy, the Son of God, the begotten Son of God. So, that's not human generation. That's not what had happened normally from one generation to the other. That pattern that was established back in the book of Genesis. He was born, and he begot, and he died. No, something new is happening in the world. Here is the only begotten Son of God who is coming into the world in this mysterious and this inconceivable way of being born to a virgin. And we can ask ourselves, how in the world does that happen? I don't know exactly how that happens. In fact, Paul acknowledges that it's a mystery what is happening here. A mystery. Yes, we've been given some information about it. It's been disclosed to us in some ways, but it also is still something that is beyond our comprehension. It's also something that strikes wonder in our hearts. As that's what he says in 1 Timothy 3 and verse 16. "Great indeed," he says, "is the mystery of godliness. He was manifested in the flesh, vindicated by the Spirit, seen by angels, proclaimed among the nations, believed on in the world, and taken up into glory." And each of those phrases points to a different aspect of the career of Jesus Christ. Each of those fit together for the total sum of our salvation, and yet it's been revealed to us, but it's still a mystery. It is still something beyond our comprehension, something that should strike wonder in us. And maybe the most of that is the mystery of godliness is the incarnation. He was manifested in the flesh. This name, the Son of God, not only fulfills the prophecies of the past, it also demonstrates to us that he is shares in the divine nature, that he is God himself. When the scripture calls him the Son of God, it's distinguishing him from other men. It's distinguishing him from the things of creation. He is not a created being. He is the descendant of God, the only begotten Son. And when we talk about that, we're talking about something that goes far beyond his birth there in Bethlehem. That's why John in his gospel, in John chapter 1 and verse 1, says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and everything that was created by the Word, and nothing that was created without the Word. Pile up those words. I guess I like that because I pile up words too, but it's like, nothing was created without him. He was there at the beginning. He created everything. Everything was created by him. Nothing that was created without him. That's before Bethlehem, long before the Son of God was born in Bethlehem. He did not begin at Bethlehem. He entered Bethlehem from heaven and from eternity. And the Jews, they understood this title maybe even better than his disciples did. When Jesus talked, sometimes the disciples seemed to catch the meaning, and sometimes it eluded them. But it's pretty clear that the Jews understood what he was saying. They didn't like it, but they understood it. So in John chapter 5 and verse 18, we read about the desire that they had and the determination they had, and they were seeking to kill him because he was calling God his own Father and making himself equal with God. They understood the meaning of the Son of God. That meant he was divine. It meant that he shared the nature of deity with God himself. He was like the Father. They understood that. They didn't accept it, but they understood what his claim was, and they were trying to kill him. Amazing when the disciples didn't quite understand it. It's like this. A lion brings forth another lion. A lamb brings forth another lamb. A man brings forth another man. A son shares the nature of his father. Sometimes on a more specific level, we'll say, oh, look, he has his father's eyes, or he has his father's chin. We recognize the continuity there. He belongs to this man because he shares those characteristics. But even more specifically, here's a man. He doesn't give birth to a lion. Here's a man. He doesn't give birth to or generate a lamb. No, it's another man. Here is the Son of God. The Son of God is like God himself. And the Jews understood that. He's claiming to be the Son of God. He's claiming to be like the Father. And of course, Paul makes that unmistakably clear to us when he writes in Colossians 2 and verse 9, for in him the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily. The whole fullness of deity dwells bodily. It's like amazing that that's the case. What exactly does that mean? Paul talks about in Philippians chapter 2, but he didn't consider being equal to God something that was robbery. He claimed that with perfect satisfaction, but he emptied himself, and he took on the form of a servant, and taking on the form of a servant, he humbled himself even to the point of crucifixion on a cross. And Paul says here, the whole fullness of deity, all that is the Father, dwells in him bodily. In psychology, we have this problem that they call the hard problem of consciousness. Because, psychology has moved in the direction of neuropsychology, and the thing that we spend more time on than anything else is studying the function of the brain. And how does the brain, with its neurochemistry, how does the brain tie into our thoughts and our feelings and our motivations? And it's like absolutely amazing the increase in our understanding about that over the last 50 years even. Amazing. But in all of that, it's like, what is consciousness? What is awareness? I can understand about building a machine that can follow orders and can do this or gather information and use that information and do something else. And we're even more puzzled by that as we create these artificial intelligence, and they have they have tricked us by using that title, artificial intelligence. So now we're like legitimately debate whether they're intelligent or not. But they kind of slipped that into us in the first place. But the debate really is, are they sentient? Are they conscious? Are they aware? And of course, that's like, how in the world can we create awareness in a machine? Well, we can't. How in the world is there awareness or consciousness, sentience in a human body? We are embodied souls from the very beginning. God created us from the dust of the earth, and he breathed into our mouths, and we became living souls in the image of God. And that's a mystery. The angels are spirits. That's okay. God is a spirit. That's something different than the physical world. But we are part of the physical world and a part of the Spirit of God. We have in us the spark of the divine, the image of God, consciousness. So we have some kind of glimmer of what it means when Paul says in Colossians chapter 2, in him dwelt the fullness of deity bodily. Not just a part of the image, but the fullness of deity dwelt in him bodily. And you're like, I don't understand. Well, that's why we call it the mystery. That's why we're amazed that Jesus is the Son of God. That's why we have so many people who refuse to accept that. They have a difficulty understanding it. And, they have various kinds of views about the Trinity, or various kinds of views about Jesus being a created being, or the fact that Jesus isn't eternal, because it's hard to imagine. It's hard for us to get our minds around the fact that in him dwelt the fullness of deity bodily. But that's what it means to say that he is the Son of God. When we see the Son, we see the Father. The Son of God reveals the Father perfectly. So that's what Philip is concerned about in John chapter 14 and in verse 9. So Philip says to Jesus, as he's talking to them about he's going away, and that kind of tender moment in which the disciples have this various rush of emotions about the fact that he's going away. Some of them understood it more clearly than others. And Philip, his concern in that moment is, well, show us the Father. Show us the Father, and that'll be enough. Then we'll be satisfied. You can go away because you've shown us the way to the Father. And Jesus says to him, whoever has seen me has seen the Father. If you know me, then you know the Father already. Absolutely amazing that in him dwelt the fullness of God bodily. That's what Hebrews 1 and verse 3 says. Hebrews 1 and verse 3, where he is writing to those Christians that came out of Judaism and accepted Jesus Christ and became a part of the community of the church, are now suffering some kind of persecution, and they are like, maybe we made the wrong choice. Maybe we should go back to something safe. Maybe we should go back to something we understand. Let's go back to something secure, like Judaism. There we've got a temple, and we've got sacrifices, and it's physical, and there it is. But by various means, the Hebrew writer says to them, that's not really an option anymore. Clearly, it's an inferior choice, even if it was an option, because Jesus is superior. He's superior to the angels. He's superior to the prophets. He's superior to Moses, superior to Joshua, superior to the high priest. What are you thinking about? Leaving Jesus behind to go back into that kind of archaic and limited system. But he begins that in Hebrews 1 and verse 3 when he says of Jesus, Hebrews 1 and verse 3, he is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. The exact imprint of his nature. He's not symbolically the Son of God, not partially the Son of God. He is the imprint. That is, if we were to take soft wax and we get the metal seal and we stamp it down on it, the imprint is the exact image of the seal that we've pressed on it. Jesus is the exact representation of God, exactly what he is. And so Jesus would say to Philip, you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And it's like, we better start recalculating. Let's go back and think again about all the things we've seen Jesus doing, all the things that we've heard him say. Now we see that in a different light. He is the Son of God. When we think about Jesus as being exactly like the Son of God, or exactly like God, he has embodied that. He has brought it into our presence. He has brought it into our lives. He has entered into creation to reveal God's nature to us. He isn't a created being. He is something beyond a created being. There are lots of things that reflect to us the glory of God, and many of you are, probably have spent some time in nature, and you're like, wow, this tells me about God. I see the mountain's majesty, and I'm in awe that this reflects something to us about the greatness of God, that he has created these mountains, the crags and the valleys and the forest and the snow caps on them. It's absolutely amazing. That's a demonstration of God's power. It tells us something about God. But mountains are not the full manifestation of God. They're not the direct representation of God that Jesus was, because they can't create anything. When we see the sun, maybe we're like, wow, look at the power. Look at the source of life and light. That tells us something about the nature of God. He's the one who created it. It represents something about that. And the scriptures, of course, use that as well. Psalm 84 and verse 11 says, the Lord God is a sun and a shield. But the sun doesn't create light. It reflects the light that God himself has created. But Jesus is the direct representation. He says in John 8 and verse 12, I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. And maybe we think about that in some ways, like symbolically, he came and revealed things to us that we didn't know, and he shattered the darkness of our ignorance. But it means more than that. I am the light of the world. Well, what about the sun? He is the creator of the sun. He is the light of the world. He is the source of all of those things that are good. When we think about being separated from God, what we find is being cast into the outer darkness where there is no light, because God, Jesus, is the source of all light. When we say that Jesus is the Son of God, we recognize he is the direct manifestation of all that the Father is. We may think we know love when we look at the things that God has given us that are such a blessing in this world. When we look at a mother holding her infant and the tenderness and the care that she places on that infant, we may see that reflecting the love that God has for us. And that is an image that the prophets use to say he has loved us in the same way that a mother has loved her nursing child. But it just reflects that. It's not the real thing itself. Jesus, in John 10 and verse 30, says, I and the Father are one. And then he writes in 1 John chapter 1 that God is love. He is love. And we see that manifested in a way that we had never seen it before as Jesus comes into the world. That's why John begins his gospel to say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, not like God, was God. And then he gets to the amazing point in John 1 and verse 14 when he says, and the Word came and took on flesh and dwelt among us. He is the radiance of God, the Son of God. Well, that has some practical applications. Maybe that's what you think about in terms of lessons. What's the practical application of that? Flights of fancy here and rhetoric perhaps, but what does it mean? It means that if you are reconciled to God, you have to be reconciled to Jesus. You can't be reconciled to God without being reconciled to Jesus, because he is the Son of God, the exact manifestation of the Son of God, the exact manifestation of God. John 5 and verse 23, whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. You can't have God without having Jesus, because Jesus is the direct manifestation of God. And in John 14 and verse 6, in that discussion that he was having with Philip, some of them said, well, show us the way. And he said, I'm the way and the truth and the life. And no one comes to the Father except by me. I'm the way. There is no other way to get there except to come through Jesus Christ. That was the point that the Hebrew writer was making to those Jews who had become Christians and were now thinking about leaving Christ and going back to the Judaistic system, is you can't get to God that way. That was a shadow, a type that led us up to understanding about Jesus. But Jesus is the only way to get to God. You can't get there except through him. You can't bypass Jesus and still reach God. If you trust him, you trust God. If you trust God, you trust him. If you obey God, you obey Jesus. It is all the same. He is not just a prophet, not just a messenger, not just an angel who's coming to the world with a message from God. He is the Son, the begotten Son. Jesus makes that point pretty clearly in Matthew 21 and verse 33 in a parable about the tenants. And of course, you've read this before, but Matthew 21 and verse 33, Jesus says, hear another parable. There was a master of a house who planted a vineyard and put a fence around it and dug a wine press in it and built a tower and leased it to tenants and went into another country. And when the season for fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the tenants to get his fruit. And the tenants took the servants and beat one and killed another and stoned another. And again he sent other servants, more than the first, and they did the same to them. Finally, he sent his son to them, saying, they will respect my son. But when the tenants saw the son, they said to themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him and have his inheritance. And they took him and threw him out of the vineyard, and they killed him. And then he says, when therefore the owner of the vineyard comes, what do you think he's going to do to those tenants? He sends a son. And of course, this is a parable about Jesus coming into the world from the Father. The other servants that they had killed, one after another, were the prophets that had been sent to the Jews. And they had disrespected them, rejected them, and killed many of them. And he says, finally, if I send my son, they'll respect my son. They'll recognize that he is not just a representation, not just a messenger. He is the landowner himself. He is God himself. The Son of God defines the authority of God himself. And we have to respect him if we're going to respect God at all. When the Father says on multiple occasions, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased, hear him. Hear Jesus, not just a matter of, listen to his suggestions. Hear means that we need to hear, understand, and obey. Not just to take those ideas from Jesus as sort of a directional guide, but they are the words that we live our lives by. God had revealed himself beforehand in partial ways, as the Hebrew writer says in Hebrews 1 and verse 2, through the prophets and dreams in various ways. But in these last days, and when he says in these last days, it's not like in these days, because there are other days coming, but these last days, this is the last time he's going to send a messenger. He sent the prophets, as in the parable of the tenants, but now he's sending his son. That's the last message. What do you think that the landowner is going to do to the tenants when he comes this time, when they have killed his son? In these last days, he has spoken to us through his son. This is different than the other messages. He has sent his son himself into the world. And of course, there are many people who would like to attack this truth. I've emphasized it over and over, and of course, I think most of you accept that, but not everybody. Thomas Jefferson, he admired Jesus as a teacher, but he famously went through the New Testament, took all the things out about miracles, all the things out about Jesus being divine, just kept the ethical doctrines. And he said, he's the greatest ethical teacher of all times. But he also said, the day will come when the mystical generation of Jesus will be classified with the fable of the generations of Minerva, one of those ancient gods of the Greeks. Likewise, Einstein said Jesus was a great moral teacher, but I just can't accept the fact that he is divine. I can't accept that fact. Jesus doesn't allow people that option. A lot of people would like to say, you know, I read the Bible, I read the Sermon on the Mount, I read the Beatitudes, and I get great comfort out of that. But they don't want to obey him. They don't want to accept his authority. They don't want to turn over the fruit of the vineyard to him. They reject that. They would like to have kind of a halfway. But the Bible doesn't allow that to be the case. Jesus doesn't allow that option. He told the Jews in John 8 and verse 58, before Abraham, I am. And when he says before Abraham, I am, he's not just getting the tense of the verbs mixed up. He is deliberately choosing the words that God revealed to Moses back in Exodus chapter 3, the covenant name of God, I am. Or as we kind of mess with it these days, Yahweh. That's who he was. He was God himself. And they understood that because they picked up stones to put him to death at that moment in time. You can't accept Jesus' moral teachings and reject his claims to deity. C.S. Lewis puts it in an interesting way that most of you heard. When you think about what Jesus said, he is either a liar or a lunatic, or he is the Lord. The claims that he made are not claims that a rational human being could make, that he is the Son of God, that I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one gets to the Father except by me. He's either knows that's wrong and he's telling it anyway, which makes him a liar, or he believes it when it's not true, which would make him some kind of lunatic, or it is absolutely true that he is the Lord. He is the Son of God. And when we think about Jesus by the multitude of his names, maybe we're endeared by the name of Jesus. That's who we know him by. Or maybe we use more frequently the title of the Christ, the Anointed One. But undergirding all of those is he is the only begotten, beloved Son of God. And we should never forget that. All right. I think that was the second bell. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you.